Emily's daily routine in the small California town had become a comforting rhythm. Every morning, she would stroll through the local park, her arms laden with her latest artistic creations. The quaint kiosk she had set up near the fountain had become a familiar sight to the regulars, showcasing her evolving style and growing confidence as an artist. On this particular day, the air was crisp with the promise of autumn, and Emily found herself lost in thought about her upcoming exhibition. Her mind was so preoccupied that she almost missed the hunched figure on the park bench ahead. Almost. As she drew closer, a nagging sense of familiarity tugged at her consciousness. The man's beard was unkempt, his clothes threadbare and stained, but there was something in the slope of his shoulders that made Emily's heart skip a beat. She slowed her pace, squinting against the morning sun, and then she saw it, the small scar just above his left eyebrow, a scar she knew intimately. Jake, her ex-husband. Emily's feet seemed to root themselves to the ground. Her breath caught in her throat as a tidal wave of memories crashed over her. The laughter, the fights, the tears, the final slam of the door. It all came rushing back in an instant. For a moment, she considered turning around and pretending she hadn't seen him. It would be easier that way, wouldn't it? But Emily had never been one to take the easy path. With a deep breath, she forced herself to move forward. "Jake?" Her voice came out as a whisper, barely audible above the rustling leaves. He looked up, and Emily felt her world tilt on its axis. His eyes, once so full of life and ambition, now seemed hollow and distant. Recognition flickered across his features, followed quickly by shame. "Emily." His voice was gruff, as if he hadn't used it in days. I didn't expect to see you here." The tension between them was palpable, a living thing that seemed to crackle in the air. Emily's mind raced, trying to reconcile the successful businessman she had known with the disheveled man before her. "What happened to you?" The words tumbled out before she could stop them, laced with a mixture of concern and accusation. Jake's laugh was bitter, devoid of any real humor. "Life, I guess. Things took an unexpected turn." Emily's eyes darted around, taking in the worn backpack at his feet, the threadbare blanket draped over his legs. "How long have you been?" She couldn't bring herself to say the word homeless. "Here? In this park?" Jake shrugged. "A few months, give or take. Time starts to blur after a while." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily's mind whirled with questions, each more pressing than the last. What had led him here? Why hadn't he reached out for help? And why, after all this time, did she still feel that pull towards him? "Have you eaten?" The question surprised even Emily herself. It seemed so mundane, so inadequate, in the face of everything unsaid between them. Jake's hesitation was brief but noticeable. Pride warred with hunger in his eyes before he finally nodded. "Not today, no." Without another word, Emily turned and walked to the nearby food cart. She returned moments later with 2 steaming cups of coffee and a pair of sandwiches. As she handed one to Jake, their fingers brushed, and for a split second, it was as if no time had passed at all. They ate in silence, the weight of their shared history hanging heavy between them. Emily's mind raced with memories, their first date, their wedding day, the dreams they had shared. How had they ended up here, strangers in a park, separated by so much more than just physical distance? As Jake finished his sandwich, he looked up at Emily, his eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and regret. "You didn't have to do this," he said softly. "I know," Emily replied, her voice equally quiet, "but I wanted to." In that moment, something shifted. The air around them seemed to change, charged with possibility and the faintest glimmer of hope. Emily knew that nothing would be the same after this day. For better or worse, Jake had re-entered her life, and she had a feeling this was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything she thought she knew about love, success, and second chances. As the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, Emily and Jake began to talk, tentatively at first, then with increasing openness. They had a lot of ground to cover, a lot of hurt to process, but for now, they were content to simply be in each other's presence, rediscovering the connection that had once meant everything to them. Over the next few days, Emily found herself drawn back to the park, her feet carrying her there almost of their own accord. Each time, she brought not only food, but also her sketchbook. As Jake slowly opened up about his experiences, Emily's pencil flew across the paper, capturing the lines of his face, the weariness in his eyes, and the unexpected strength that seemed to radiate from him despite his circumstances. On the third day, as Emily settled onto the bench beside him, Jake took a deep breath and began to unravel the story that had led him to this point. His voice was low, tinged with a mixture of regret and resolve. "It all started about a year ago," he began, his eyes fixed on a distant point. "I was at the height of my career. The company was thriving. We were expanding into new markets, and everything seemed perfect on the surface." Emily nodded, remembering the Jake she had known, ambitious, driven, always chasing the next big deal. She remained silent, allowing him to continue at his own pace. But then, Jake's voice faltered for a moment. Then came the scandal. My father, it turns out, had been embezzling funds for years. When it all came to light, the whole family was implicated. Overnight, everything I had worked for, everything I thought I knew about my life and my family, came crashing down. As Jake spoke, Emily's pencil moved across the paper, capturing the pain etched in the lines around his mouth, the haunted look in his eyes. She found herself seeing him not as her ex-husband, but as a man grappling with a profound loss of identity. "I could have fought it, I suppose," Jake continued. "Hired lawyers, tried to distance myself from the whole mess. But something in me just snapped. I realized that I had been living a life that wasn't really mine, chasing goals that didn't truly matter." Emily's hand stilled on the page. "So you decided to walk away from everything?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. Jake nodded, a wry smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Crazy, right? One day I was Jake Thompson, Billionaire CEO. The next I was just Jake. No money, no status, no expectations. It was terrifying and liberating all at once." As Jake delved deeper into his experiences of the past few months, the initial shock of homelessness, the struggle to find food and shelter, the moments of despair and unexpected kindness from strangers, Emily found herself increasingly drawn into his story. She began to see glimpses of the man she had fallen in love with years ago. But there was something new there too, a depth and vulnerability that she had never seen before. "It hasn't been easy," Jake admitted, running a hand through his unkempt hair. "There are days when I wonder if I made the right choice. But then I remember how empty I felt before, how disconnected from everything real. This feels more authentic, even with all its challenges." Emily nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. "You're reinventing yourself," she said softly. Jake met her gaze, a spark of his old intensity shining through. "I'm trying to. I don't know where this path will lead, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm actually living, not just existing." As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, Emily found herself grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. She was in awe of Jake's courage, angry at the circumstances that had led him here, and, most surprisingly, questioning her own life choices. Her art career was on the rise. She had gallery showings lined up, and her name was starting to be recognized in the local art scene. But sitting here, listening to Jake's story of radical transformation, she couldn't help but wonder, was she truly following her passion, Or had she too been caught up in chasing a version of success that didn't align with her deepest values? As they parted ways that evening, Emily felt a shift in her perception. Jake was no longer just her ex-husband, a remnant of her past. He had become a mirror, reflecting back questions about authenticity, courage, and the true meaning of a life well lived. Walking home, her sketchbook filled with new drawings and her mind buzzing with new thoughts, Emily realized that this unexpected reconnection with Jake was forcing her to confront aspects of herself and her life that she had long ignored. She didn't know where this journey would lead, but she was certain of one thing: nothing would ever be quite the same again. As Emily's unexpected encounters with Jake continued, her own professional life began to take center stage. Her upcoming gallery show had caught the attention of Martin Reeves, a prominent art producer known for his ability to launch artists into the spotlight. What should have been an exciting opportunity, however, quickly became a source of internal conflict for Emily. On a crisp autumn morning, Emily found herself in Martin's sleek downtown office, surrounded by abstract sculptures and avant-garde paintings. The producer's piercing gaze seemed to dissect her as he flipped through her portfolio. "Your work has potential, Emily," Martin said, his voice smooth as silk. "But if you want to make it big, you'll need to adapt." Emily shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "Adapt how?" Martin leaned forward, his eyes glinting. "Your current style is too niche. We need to broaden your appeal. Think bigger, bolder, more provocative." As Martin outlined his vision for her art, Emily felt a growing unease. He spoke of larger canvases, more shocking themes, and a complete overhaul of her color palette. With each suggestion, Emily felt her artistic identity being slowly eroded. "This isn't really my style," Emily protested weakly. Martin's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Style evolves, my dear, and if you want success, real success, you need to be willing to change." As she left the office, Emily's mind was in turmoil. Martin's words echoed in her head, clashing with her own artistic instincts. The promise of fame and fortune was tempting, but at what cost? Later that week, Emily met her best friend Sophia for coffee. As they sat in their favorite cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed espresso filling the air, Emily poured out her concerns. "I just don't know, Soph," Emily sighed, stirring her latte absently. "Martin's offering me a huge opportunity, but it feels wrong." Sophia listened intently, her brow furrowed in concern. "What does your gut tell you?" Emily paused, considering. "My gut tells me to run, but my head says I'd be crazy to pass this up. What if this is my only shot at making it big?" "Is that what you really want, though?" Sophia asked gently. "To make it big?" The question hit Emily like a punch to the gut. She realized she didn't have a clear answer. For years, she had been pushing herself, striving for recognition in the art world. But now, faced with the reality of what that might entail, she found herself questioning everything. "I don't know anymore," Emily admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been so focused on succeeding that I'm not sure I remember why I started painting in the first place." As they continued to talk, Emily found herself opening up about her recent encounters with Jake. She described his radical life change and how it had forced her to reconsider her own priorities. "It's like he's living this completely authentic life now," Emily mused. "No pretenses, no chasing after status or money. And here I am, considering compromising everything I believe in for a shot at fame." Sophia reached across the table, squeezing Emily's hand. "You don't have to decide anything right now. Take some time. Reconnect with why you love art. The right path will become clear." As Emily left the cafe, her conversation with Sophia had brought her inner turmoil into sharp focus. She felt pulled in multiple directions. The allure of success as defined by the art world, the integrity of her artistic vision, and the unexpected influence of Jake's radical lifestyle change. Walking home, Emily's gaze was drawn to the small moments of beauty around her. The play of light on a shop window, the vibrant colors of fall leaves, the expressions on passers-by's faces. These were the things that had always inspired her art, the small, overlooked details that she strived to capture on canvas. She realized that in her pursuit of success, she had started to lose sight of these moments. The pressure to make it had begun to overshadow her love for the creative process itself. As she approached her apartment, Emily made a decision. She would take a step back, reevaluate her goals, and reconnect with her artistic roots. She didn't have all the answers yet, but she knew that moving forward, she needed to find a way to balance her ambitions with her integrity. The upcoming gallery show loomed on the horizon, a pivotal moment in her career. But now, more than ever, Emily was determined to face it on her own terms, whatever the consequences might be. As autumn deepened, Emily found herself spending more time with Jake in the park. Their conversations had evolved from awkward exchanges to deep, meaningful dialogues about life, art, and personal growth. With each meeting, the walls between them seemed to crumble a little more. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Jake turned to Emily with an intensity in his eyes that she hadn't seen in years. "Emily," he began, his voice low and hesitant, "I need to tell you something." Emily felt her heart rate quicken. She nodded, encouraging him to continue. Jake took a deep breath. "These past few weeks, talking with you, being around you, it's made me realize something. I still love you, Emily. I never stopped." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Emily felt a rush of emotions, surprise, confusion, and a flicker of something she wasn't quite ready to name. Jake continued, his words tumbling out in a rush. "I know it's crazy. I know I have no right to say this, especially given my current situation, but I can't deny how I feel. Being with you again, even just talking like this, it feels right in a way nothing has in years." Emily sat in stunned silence, her mind racing. Part of her wanted to embrace this confession, to admit that she too had been feeling a rekindling of old emotions, but another part held back, wary of the complications and potential heartache. "Jake," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper, I don't know what to say. This is all so unexpected." Jake nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I know, and I'm not asking for anything. I needed you to know. But Emily, you should also know that my past, the life I left behind, it's not gone. It's still out there, and I'm afraid it might affect you if we—" He trailed off, leaving the sentence unfinished. Emily understood the implication. Jake's former life as a billionaire, the scandal he had fled from, these weren't just personal demons, but potential threats to anyone close to him. Emily found herself torn. The practical side of her mind warned of the complications, the potential risks. But her heart, which had been awakening more and more with each of their meetings, whispered of second chances and rediscovered love. "I can't deny that I've been feeling something too," Emily admitted, her voice soft. "Being with you these past weeks, it stirred up a lot of old feelings. But Jake, we can't just ignore everything that's happened. Your situation, my career, there's so much to consider." Jake nodded, a mix of hope and resignation in his eyes. "I understand. I'm not asking for any decisions right now. I just wanted you to know how I feel."
As the last light faded from the sky, they sat in companionable silence, both lost in thought. The air between them felt charged with possibility, but also heavy with the weight and uncertain future. Suddenly, caught up in the moment and the swirl of emotions, it was a brief impulse impulsive act over almost as soon as it began. But in that fleeting moment, years of history, pain, and unresolved feelings surged between them.
As they pulled apart, both looked surprised by what had just happened. Emily felt a blush creeping up her cheeks, while Jake's eyes were wide with wonder. "I'm sorry," Emily stammered. "I don't know what came over me." Jake shook his head, a small smile playing on his lips. "Don't apologize. I'm not sorry it happened." But reality quickly reasserted itself. They both knew that this moment, however sweet, didn't erase the challenges they faced. Jake was still living on the streets, grappling with the aftermath of his decision to leave his old life behind. Emily was at a crossroads in her career, trying to balance her artistic integrity with the pressures of success. As they parted ways that night, both felt a mixture of hope and trepidation. Something had shifted between them, opening up new possibilities. But with those possibilities came a host of questions and potential complications. Emily walked home, her mind whirling with thoughts of Jake, her art, and the uncertain path ahead. She knew that whatever happened next would require careful consideration and probably some difficult decisions. But for now, she allowed herself to feel a glimmer of excitement at the prospect of rediscovering a love she thought she had lost forever. The days following their impulsive kiss were filled with a nervous energy for Emily. She found herself both looking forward to and dreading their next meeting, unsure of how to navigate this new shift in their relationship. When they finally met again, the tension was palpable. Jake seemed different today, more pensive than usual. As they sat on their usual bench, he turned to Emily with a serious expression. "There's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice low and urgent. "Something I should have told you a long time ago." Emily felt her heart race, bracing herself for what was to come. "What is it, Jake?" He took a deep breath before continuing. "The reason I left, it wasn't just about the trauma or the scandal. It was about you, Emily." Confusion crossed Emily's face. "Me? What do you mean?" Jake's eyes met hers, filled with a mixture of pain and sincerity. "I left because I didn't want to hold you back. Your art was just starting to take off, and I saw how passionate you were about it. I was afraid that if I stayed, with all the chaos surrounding my family's scandal, I would end up suffocating your dreams." The revelation hit Emily like a thunderbolt. All this time, she had believed that Jake had abandoned her out of selfishness, that he had chosen to run away rather than face their problems together. But now, hearing his words, she felt her world tilting on its axis. You left for me?" Emily's voice was barely above a whisper, incredulity coloring her tone. Jake nodded, his expression pained. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I convinced myself that you'd be better off without me, that I'd only drag you down. It was the hardest decision I've ever made, Emily." Emily's mind reeled as she processed this new information. Memories of their last days together, the arguments, the tension, all took on a new light. She had interpreted Jake's distance as indifference, his silence as selfishness. But now she realized he had been fighting an internal battle, one she had been completely unaware of. "Why didn't you tell me?" Emily asked, her voice cracking with emotion. "We could have faced it together. I would have stood by you, Jake." Jake's eyes filled with regret. "I know that now. But back then, I was scared. Scared of ruining your future. Scared of not being the man you deserved. So I made the decision for both of us. And I've regretted it every day since." As Jake's words sank in, Emily felt a whirlwind of emotions. Anger at the years lost, sadness for the pain they had both endured, and a confusing mix of gratitude and frustration at Jake's misguided attempt to protect her dreams. "I don't know what to say," Emily admitted, her voice trembling. "All this time I thought you just didn't care enough to stay." Jake reached out, hesitantly taking her hand. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I realize now how much I hurt you. If I could go back." Emily squeezed his hand, cutting him off. "We can't go back, Jake. What's done is done. But thank you for telling me the truth now." As they sat there, hands intertwined, Emily felt as if she was seeing Jake and their past with new eyes. The man she had resented for years suddenly appeared in a different light. His actions, while misguided, had come from a place of love and sacrifice. This revelation forced Emily to confront her own motivations and desires. Had she been right to pursue her art so single-mindedly? Had she unconsciously used Jake's departure as fuel for her ambition, channeling her pain into her work? As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park, Emily realized that this new understanding of their shared history would require her to reevaluate not just her past, but her present and future as well. The path forward was far from clear, but for the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps they could find a way to reconcile their past with their present. The weight of unspoken words and misunderstood intentions began to lift, replaced by a tentative hope for what might come next. As Emily and Jake sat in contemplative silence, both knew that while this revelation had answered many questions, it had also opened the door to many more. In the days following Jake's revelation, Emily found herself in a state of emotional turmoil. The truth about Jake's departure had shaken her to her core, forcing her to reevaluate not only their past, but also her present and future. This internal struggle began to manifest in her art as she poured her conflicting emotions onto canvas. Emily's studio, once a sanctuary of creativity, now felt like a battleground of competing desires and obligations. Her upcoming collection, inspired by her conversations with Jake, was taking shape, but so too was a sense of division within her. As she worked on a particularly large piece, a swirling abstract that seemed to capture the chaos of her emotions, Emily found herself constantly distracted by thoughts of Jake. Their meetings had become more frequent, each one charged with an undercurrent of unresolved feelings and possibilities. One afternoon, as Emily was adding the final touches to her painting, her phone buzzed with a message from her agent. It was a reminder about an upcoming meeting with a prestigious gallery owner, an opportunity that could catapult her career to new heights. Emily stared at the message, feeling a familiar knot of anxiety form in her stomach. The pressure to succeed, to make a name for herself in the art world, had been a driving force in her life for so long. But now, with Jake back in the picture and her understanding of their past fundamentally altered, she found herself questioning the path she had been so determined to follow. As if on cue, another message popped up on her phone, this time from Jake. He was asking if she wanted to meet for coffee. Emily felt a smile tug at her lips, even as her heart rate quickened with anticipation and uncertainty. She agreed to meet Jake, deciding to take a break from her work. As she cleaned her brushes and tidied her studio, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of guilt. Was she neglecting her career by spending so much time with Jake? Or had she been neglecting her personal life in pursuit of professional success? Later, as they sat in a cozy corner of their favorite coffee shop, Emily watched Jake struggle to maintain his composure as he shared his latest attempts at finding employment. "It's not easy," he admitted, a hint of frustration in his voice. "My resume has some pretty significant gaps, and when I try to explain, well, let's just say most employers aren't too keen on hiring someone who voluntarily became homeless." Emily reached out, placing her hand on his arm in a gesture of support. "I'm sorry, Jake. I can't imagine how difficult this must be for you." Jake's smile was tinged with sadness. "It's okay. I made my choices, and I have to live with the consequences. I want to feel like I'm moving forward, you know?" As they continued to talk, Emily felt the familiar pull of connection between them growing stronger. Yet at the same time, she was acutely aware of the complexities of their situation. Jake was still struggling to find his footing in this new life he had chosen, while Emily's career was at a crucial juncture. The conversation shifted to Emily's upcoming exhibition, and Jake's eyes lit up with genuine enthusiasm as she described her new pieces. "I can't wait to see them, Em. Your work has always been incredible, but from what you're describing, it sounds like you're reaching a whole new level." Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest at his words, but it was quickly followed by a pang of uncertainty. "Thanks, Jake. I just hope it's enough. This exhibition could be a real turning point for me." As they parted ways, Emily felt the weight of her conflicting emotions more keenly than ever. On one hand, there was Jake, a connection to her past that now held the promise of a possible future. On the other, there was her career, the result of years of hard work and determination, now poised on the brink of potential breakthrough. Walking back to her studio, Emily's mind raced with questions. Could she balance her rekindled feelings for Jake with the demands of her career? Was it possible to have both love and success? Or would she inevitably have to choose between them? As she re-entered her studio, surrounded by canvases that reflected her inner turmoil, Emily realized that the biggest artwork she was creating wasn't on any canvas. It was her life, and every choice she made was another brushstroke on that complex, ever-evolving masterpiece. With a deep breath, she picked up her brush again, determined to pour her conflicted heart into her art. Whatever the future held, Emily knew that these paintings would stand as a testament to this pivotal moment in her life, a moment of both incredible possibility and agonizing indecision. The night of Emily's art exhibition arrived, bringing with it a whirlwind of emotions and expectations. The gallery buzzed with anticipation as art enthusiasts, critics, and potential buyers milled about, their murmured conversations creating a soft hum of excitement. Emily stood near the entrance, her heart pounding. She was dressed in a sleek black dress that contrasted sharply with her vibrant paintings adorning the walls. Her latest collection, inspired by her recent experiences and inner turmoil, was a departure from her previous work. Bold strokes and turbulent colors dominated the canvases, reflecting the emotional journey she'd been on. As she greeted guests and fielded questions about her work, Emily's eyes kept darting to the door. She had invited Jake, but wasn't sure if he would come. The thought of him seeing her in this world, her world, filled her with both excitement and trepidation. Sophia appeared at her side, champagne flute in hand. "Emily, darling, this is amazing. I've never seen your work so raw, so powerful." Emily smiled, grateful for her friend's support. "Thanks, Soph. I just hope everyone else sees it that way too." As the evening progressed, Emily found herself caught up in a whirlwind of introductions and discussions. Art critics praised her bold new direction, while potential buyers expressed interest in several pieces. It was everything she had worked for, yet Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something, or someone, was missing. Then, just as she was beginning to lose hope, she saw him. Jake stood near the back of the gallery, looking slightly out of place in his simple, clean clothes. Their eyes met across the room, and Emily felt her breath catch in her throat. Excusing herself from her current conversation, Emily made her way towards Jake. As she approached, she could see the mix of emotions playing across his face: pride, awe, and a hint of something that looked like regret. "You came," Emily said softly, coming to stand beside him. Jake nodded, his eyes never leaving her face. "Of course. I wouldn't have missed this for the world, Em." The tension between them was palpable, charged with unspoken words and lingering questions. Jake's gaze swept the room, taking in the crowd and the artwork adorning the walls. "Your work. It's incredible, Emily. I always knew you were talented, but this..." He gestured to the paintings surrounding them. "This is something else entirely." Emily felt a flush of pride and gratitude wash over her. "Thank you, Jake. That means a lot coming from you." As they stood there, surrounded by Emily's art and the buzz of the crowd, the complexities of their situation seemed to crystallize. Jake, still struggling to find his place in this new life he'd chosen, looked both proud and slightly lost in this world that was so quintessentially Emily's. Emily, for her part, felt the familiar pull towards Jake, stronger than ever. Yet she was also acutely aware of the momentum her career was gaining, the opportunities that this night could bring. Their moment was interrupted by the arrival of Martin Reeves, the art producer who had been pressuring Emily to change her style. His eyes narrowed slightly as he took in Jake's presence. "Emily, darling, the crowd is loving your work," Martin said, his voice smooth as silk. "I must say I'm pleasantly surprised. This new direction, it's bold, provocative, exactly what we talked about." Emily felt a flicker of annoyance at Martin's implication that her success was due to his suggestions. She was about to respond when Jake spoke up. "Emily's always been bold," Jake said, his voice quiet but firm. "Her work is a reflection of her spirit. That's what makes it so powerful." Martin raised an eyebrow, clearly not used to being challenged. "And you are?" "An old friend," Jake replied, his gaze steady. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Emily found herself caught between these two men who represented such different aspects of her life. Jake, a connection to her past and possibly her future, and Martin, a symbol of the career success she'd been striving for. As the night wore on, Emily found herself torn between engaging with potential buyers and critics and stealing moments with Jake. Each time their eyes met across the room, she felt a jolt of electricity, a reminder of the unresolved feelings between them. By the time the last guest had left and the gallery began to empty, Emily was exhausted but exhilarated. The exhibition had been a success by any measure, with several pieces sold and glowing reviews from critics. As she began to gather her things, she saw Jake waiting patiently by the door. The sight of him there, supporting her even as he grappled with his own struggles, made her heart swell with emotion. Walking towards him, Emily realized that the night had brought more than just professional success. It had also crystallized the decision she now faced, a decision between the career she had worked so hard for and the chance at rekindling a love she thought she had lost forever. As they left the gallery together, stepping out into the cool night air, Emily knew that whatever choice she made would shape not just her future, but the very essence of who she was and who she wanted to become. In the days following the successful art exhibition, Emily found herself at a crossroads. The buzz from the show still lingered, with critics praising her new direction and collectors expressing interest in her work. Yet, amidst the professional triumph, Emily felt a growing sense of unease. One morning, as she sat in her studio surrounded by half-finished canvases, her phone rang. It was Martin Reeves, the art producer who had been pushing her to change her style. "Emily, darling," Martin's voice oozed charm. "I hope you're still basking in the glow of your success. I've got wonderful news. I've secured a contract with Galerie d'Art Moderne in Paris. They want to feature your work in a solo exhibition. This is huge, my dear. Your ticket to the big leagues." Emily's heart raced. Paris, a solo exhibition. It was everything she had ever dreamed of. But as Martin continued to speak, outlining his vision for her future work, Emily felt a familiar knot form in her stomach. "We'll need to push your boundaries even further," Martin was saying. "More provocative themes, larger canvases. We'll make you the talk of the art world." As she listened, Emily's gaze fell on a small, unfinished painting in the corner of her studio. It was a piece she had started after one of her conversations with Jake. Intimate, raw, and deeply personal. It wasn't flashy or provocative, but it felt more authentic than anything she had produced for the exhibition. "Emily, are you there?" Martin's voice cut through her thoughts. "Yes, I'm here," she replied. "Martin, this sounds like an amazing opportunity, but I need some time to think about it." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Think about it? Emily, opportunities like this don't come along every day. We need to strike while the iron is hot." "I understand," Emily said, her voice firmer now. "But this is a big decision. I'll get back to you soon, I promise." After ending the call, Emily sat in silence, her mind whirling. The offer was tempting, a chance to catapult her career to new heights. But at what cost? The thought of compromising her artistic vision, of creating work that didn't truly resonate with her soul, felt suffocating. Later that day, Emily met Jake in their usual spot in the park. As they walked along the path, she shared the news about Martin's offer. Jake listened intently, his brow furrowed in thought. When she finished speaking, he turned to her, his eyes full of understanding. "Em, that's an incredible opportunity," he said softly. "But the real question is it what you want?" Emily felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. "I don't know anymore, Jake. I've worked so hard for this, but now that it's here, I'm not sure if it's the right path for me." Jake reached out, gently taking her hand. "Listen to your heart, Emily. Your art has always been an extension of you. Honest, beautiful, and true. Don't let anyone push you to be something you're not." His words resonated deeply with Emily. She thought about the small, unfinished painting in her studio, the one that felt more real than anything she had produced for the exhibition. "What if I say no?" she whispered, voicing her fear. "What if this is my only chance at real success?" Jake's grip on her hand tightened slightly. "Emily, you're incredibly talented. Your success should come on your own terms, not at the cost of your artistic integrity. And for what it's worth, I believe in you. Whatever you decide, I know you'll create something beautiful and meaningful." As they continued their walk, Emily felt a sense of clarity slowly begin to emerge. Jake's unwavering support, coupled with her own gut feeling, was pointing her towards a decision. The next morning, Emily called Martin. Her voice was steady as she spoke. "Martin, I appreciate the opportunity, but I'm going to have to decline. I need to stay true to my artistic vision, even if it means taking a different path." There was a long pause before Martin replied, his tone cooler now. "I see. Well, Emily, I hope you understand what you're giving up. Opportunities like this don't come around often." "I understand," Emily said, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "But I have to follow my heart. My art has to come from an authentic place, or it's not really mine anymore." After ending the call, Emily turned to face her studio. The small, unfinished painting caught her eye once again. With a smile, she picked up her brush and began to work, feeling more inspired and true to herself than she had in months. As she painted, Emily realized that her decision wasn't just about her art. It was about staying true to herself, about valuing authenticity over external validation. And somewhere in that realization, she found a new kind of success, one measured not by gallery shows or critical acclaim, but by the joy and truth she could express through her work. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, Emily felt excited about the journey. She had chosen to follow her heart in both her art and her life, and she couldn't wait to see where it would lead her. As the days passed following Emily's decision to decline Martin's offer, she found herself immersed in a newfound sense of artistic freedom. Her studio buzzed with creative energy as she explored themes and techniques that truly resonated with her soul. However, the euphoria of her artistic liberation was tempered by the growing complexity of her relationship with Jake. One evening, after spending the afternoon painting together in the park, Jake and Emily found themselves walking along the beach as the sun began to set. The sound of waves lapping at the shore provided a soothing backdrop to their conversation. Emily had been excitedly sharing her plans for a new series of paintings, her eyes alight with passion. Jake listened intently, a soft smile playing on his lips. But as Emily's words trailed off, she noticed a shadow pass over Jake's face. "Jake, what's wrong?" she asked, concern coloring her voice. Jake stopped walking, turning to face the ocean. The fading sunlight cast long shadows across his features, accentuating the weariness in his eyes. "Emily," he began, his voice barely audible above the sound of the waves. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about our situation." Emily felt her heart rate quicken. "What do you mean?" Jake turned to face her, his expression a mix of love and resignation. "You're flourishing, Em. Your art, your career, you're finally embracing your true self. And I'm so proud of you, but I can't help feeling like I'm holding you back." "Jake, no," Emily protested, reaching for his hand. "You're not holding me back. If anything, you've helped me find my way." But Jake gently pulled his hand away, shaking his head. "Emily, look at me. I'm still struggling to find my place in this world. I don't have a job, a home. I have nothing to offer you except complications and potential scandals from my past." Emily felt tears welling up in her eyes. "I don't care about any of that, Jake. We can figure it out together." Jake's smile was sad as he replied, "But that's just it, Em. I don't want you to have to figure it out. You should be free to focus on your art, on building the life you've always dreamed of, not worrying about me or the baggage I bring with me." As Jake's words sank in, Emily felt a surge of emotions, anger, fear, and an overwhelming sense of déjà vu. "So what? You're just going to leave again? Make the decision for both of us, just like last time." Jake flinched at her words but stood his ground. "I'm not making the decision, Emily. I think we need to face reality. Your world and mine, they're so different now. Maybe it's better if we go our separate ways." Emily felt as if the ground was shifting beneath her feet. After everything they had been through, after all the revelations and reconnections, was this really how it was going to end? "No," she said, her voice firm despite the tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "No, Jake, I won't let you do this. Not again." She stepped closer to him, her eyes blazing with determination. "Yes, my career is important to me, but so are you. I've lived without you once, and I don't want to do it again. We've both changed, grown. Maybe our worlds are different now, but that doesn't mean we can't build a new one together." Jake's resolve seemed to waver, hope and fear warring in his eyes. "But Emily, what about your art, your future? I don't want to be a burden." Emily reached out, cupping Jake's face in her hands. "You're not a burden, Jake. You're my inspiration, my support. My art has never been more authentic than it is now, with you in my life. We can face whatever comes our way, together." As they stood there on the beach, the last rays of sunlight disappearing below the horizon, the weight of their shared history and the uncertainty of their future hung heavy in the air. Jake's eyes searched Emily's face, as if looking for any sign of doubt. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jake let out a shaky breath. "Okay," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Okay, Em, if you're sure, if you really want this, then let's try. Together." Emily felt a wave of relief wash over her as Jake pulled her into a tight embrace. As they held each other, the sound of the waves a constant rhythm in the background, Emily knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, doubts, and difficult moments. But as she stood there in Jake's arms, Emily felt a sense of rightness that she hadn't experienced in years. They had both changed, grown, and faced their demons. Now they had the chance to build something new, a relationship based on mutual understanding, support, and a shared vision for the future. As they began the walk back, hand in hand, Emily felt a sense of excitement for what lay ahead. The future was uncertain, But for the first time in a long while, she was ready to face it, with her art, her integrity, and Jake by her side. Several months had passed since that fateful night on the beach. Emily's life had settled into a new rhythm, one that balanced her renewed artistic passion with her evolving relationship with Jake. Her latest collection, inspired by their journey of rediscovery and reconciliation, had garnered critical acclaim, attracting the attention of a prestigious gallery in New York. As Emily stood in the bustling gallery on the opening night of her new exhibition, she couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. The space buzzed with energy as art enthusiasts, critics, and collectors milled about, discussing her work in hushed, excited tones. But this time, something was different. Emily felt grounded, confident in her artistic vision and the path she had chosen. She scanned the room, searching for Jake. He had promised to be there, but as the night wore on, she began to worry. Just as she was about to check her phone for any messages, a commotion near the entrance caught her attention. A tall, distinguished-looking man had entered the gallery, immediately drawing the attention of those around him. Emily's breath caught in her throat as she realized it was Jake, but not the Jake she had come to know over the past months. This Jake was impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his beard neatly trimmed, his posture exuding confidence and purpose. As he made his way through the crowd, people seemed to naturally part before him, whispering excitedly. Emily stood frozen, her mind racing to make sense of what she was seeing. Jake approached her, a warm smile on his face. "Congratulations, Emily," he said, his voice carrying the same warmth she had grown to love. "Your work is extraordinary." Emily struggled to find her voice. "Jake? What? I don't understand." Jake's expression softened, understanding the confusion in her eyes. He gently guided her to a quiet corner of the gallery, away from the curious onlookers. "I owe you an explanation," he began, his voice low. "Do you remember when I told you about leaving my old life behind? Well, that wasn't the whole truth." Emily listened, her heart pounding, as Jake unraveled the story. He explained that after the family scandal, he had indeed walked away from his wealth and status, determined to find a new purpose. But during their time apart, he had been working behind the scenes, using his business acumen and connections to build a foundation focused on supporting emerging artists and promoting arts education in underprivileged communities. "I needed to find myself, Emily," Jake explained, his eyes never leaving hers. "To figure out who I was without the trappings of wealth and status. But I also wanted to create something meaningful, something that could make a real difference." Emily's mind whirled with this new information. "But why didn't you tell me sooner? Why maintain the charade?" Jake's expression turned sheepish. "At first, I was afraid that if you knew the truth, you might see me differently, that it might change what was growing between us. And then I realized I needed to prove to myself that I could stand on my own, that I could be worthy of you without relying on my past." As the truth sank in, Emily felt a mix of emotions: surprise, confusion, and a growing sense of admiration for Jake's journey. She realized that just as she had been finding her true artistic voice, Jake had been discovering his own path to making a difference in the world. "So, what happens now?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake took her hands in his gaze intense. "Now, if you'll have me, I want us to build a future together. Your art, my foundation. We could create something beautiful, Emily. Something that could inspire and support artists for years to come." As Emily looked into Jake's eyes, she saw not just the man she had fallen in love with all those years ago, but also the person he had become. Someone who had faced his demons, rediscovered his purpose, and found a way to make a positive impact on the world. In that moment, surrounded by her art and the promise of a future she had never imagined possible, Emily made her decision. She leaned in, kissing Jake softly, not caring about the surprised murmurs from the gallery patrons around them. As they pulled apart, both smiling, Emily realized that their journey had come full circle. They had both needed to lose themselves to truly find each other again. And now, with their shared experiences and newfound purpose, they were ready to embark on a new adventure together. The exhibition continued around them, but for Emily and Jake, it felt like the beginning of something much bigger. They had weathered storms, faced their fears, and emerged stronger. Now, hand in hand, they were ready to paint a new masterpiece, one that combined Emily's artistic vision with Jake's philanthropic mission, creating a legacy that would inspire generations to come. As they turned to face the crowd, ready to share their vision with the world, Emily felt a surge of excitement for the future. Life, she realized, much like art, was full of unexpected twists and turns. But with love, determination, and a willingness to embrace change, even the most surprising plot twists could lead to the most beautiful of stories.